There's a movie I like with Weird Al Yankovic called UHF, and it's got this show where you can win prizes like fish. You win fish. It's a really funny movie. Go check it out. And in it, this person is like, "Do you want this 10,000? You want this really nice car, or do you want what's in the box?" And she says, "I want what's in the box." And then he says, "You get," and there's nothing in there. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's what Nuggets fans got at the trade deadline. Absolutely nothing. Ryan is sad. Swipa is mad. And Matt, he's just glad to be here. We'll talk about it on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, Monday through Friday, especially on this, a Thursday trade deadline special triple threat edition. Glad to have you guys with us, regardless of what may or may not have happened for the Nuggets at the deadline. We will continue to cover all of it in detail for you here at Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for being an everydayer and finding us wherever you get podcasts or videos. If you're a fan of youtube.com/Locked On Nuggets, where I'm sure we're going to reach like 9K this week. We're going to do it.
Hell yeah.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. Did you hear that, Swipa? Super Bowl this weekend.
Nobody actually cares at this point.
And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. You're all going to watch anyway. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Ryan Blackburn. He just got off of a live show over at Pickaxe and Roll. So thanks to him for doing a double dip here and doing Locked On Nuggets with us. Also joined by Swipa. You can catch him after every Nuggets game on his channel at Swipacam. He's on Player's Choice. He is on. You have a new show? Yes? No? No, you do not have a new show. That's another thing for your other job that you share with me. So the Nuggets did nothing at the deadline. Nothing. No trades were made. I kept checking in. Was like, hey, anything? Yesterday was their chance. They were talking to several teams. They had some things cooking, but couldn't beat out the other offers based off of what they were willing to give in terms of pick swaps and everything. And in some ways, hey, nobody wanted their pick swaps because they still think the Nuggets are going to be pretty good because they have Nikola Jokic. That's the upside. Nobody wanted your picks because they think you're still going to be pretty good. So your picks aren't as valuable. I don't blame anybody for being upset because I do think if you watch the season, the biggest problem is I'll say this and then I'll hand it over to Swipa first. They won the title. They got worse by losing Bruce Brown. They were set to repeat. They looked like they were going to repeat. They came up short. They got worse again by losing KCP. And they have not made a move to reverse that. They are banking so much on internal improvement. And if Peyton had become a 3-level scorer and a real weapon off the bench, if we were talking about him for 6-man, this would be different. If Julian Strother looked like he was a lighted up, even if he was just Jordan Clarkson, you would be like, all right, okay, that's something. If Zeke Naji had become playable, then this would be a different conversation. But none of those things have happened. And so now here we are. Ryan, do you want to go first, or I think we should let Swipa do?
Yeah, no, let's go. Let's let Swipa go off because I've got some other things. I need to take a break after that live show. So I'm just kidding. Let's get into it with Cam. Swipa, what you looking sad and frustrated over there?
Nope, no sad. Nope. I'm not even frustrated. I think that the level that I'm at currently is, I think there have been jobs that have been done that were not done correctly. And I think a lot of this is we have had conversations about how do we build a team? What does the process look like? What are the things that are needed on the roster? The kind of players you need on the roster, from defenders to just playmakers to length, all those things. And I think there were decisions that have been made. We don't have to rehash them over the last 2 years about contracts and asset management, player options. And what's happened is there's been a convolution of different decisions that were made that have led up to this trade deadline. And this trade deadline, I think the biggest thing is that we've had so many different opportunities to evaluate what is on this roster. And I think around the league, what you need in order to win. I think we've watched this team now for last year, saw the defects, saw the downsides. the adds to the team were Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric. Dario Saric, again, is the 6th highest paid player on the team. Zeke Naji became the 5th highest paid player on the team. And so you wanted to fill these holes, and then you come into the year, they're worse defensively than they have been since the 2021-22 year. But even then, they were 15th in defense. So they're back on pace with what they were doing in the 1920 season prior to the 2021 season, really right after the bubble when they were completely exhausted. I mean, their adjusted defense I shared, earlier, they're 19th in adjusted defense. There's so many things they're missing, screen navigators, everything KCP did, just to be short. And so I think what I'm looking at now is that, Booth, he understood what his role was. Just like I understand what my role is. You understand what your role is that we're here to be storytellers. We're here to tell the story of the Denver Nuggets, both from our vantage point, with information we've collected for the sake of the audience. Like, I am to be an interpreter of events to people, that's what storytelling is. Booth knows that his job, and what he said to us the day he got the job, is that he's a steward of the Jokic era, and that if there are needs that must be addressed with the roster, then they have to be addressed. And I think my biggest criticism is, and I think where we've gotten here at this point, is I think everybody can watch this team and know that there are certain things that they just need to add. They need improvement at certain levels. And we know that he tried. Reportedly Chris Boucher, reportedly Jonas Valanciunas, then reportedly Terrence Mann were the names that were most mentioned. But I think that's where we get back to the onus is, the reason they weren't able to, I think, collect a lot of those assets is because they had sent out their own assets. What the 3 second-round picks for Deron Holmes, which again is not his fault, that's an Achilles tear. The 3 second-round picks for Reggie Jackson, what they got back in certain deals they sent out, even from Bones Highland, I believe, the 2 second-round picks. There's just not been a lot, I think, done to protect assets, especially when you're moving towards a more cap-strict era because of the first and second apron. And you avoid the second apron. You don't sign KCP for the purposes of flexibility.
Yeah, so here's the math behind that, by the way,
Sure.
Bringing my nerddom here. The Nuggets effectively traded Reggie Jackson, JaMychal Green, 2 first-round picks, and 7 second-round picks for Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther, Deron Holmes, Hunter Tyson, and Jalen Pickett. Now, when you say it like that, and you think about all the assets that they've given up, but even more importantly than that, just the amount of flexibility that they've given up and being able to kind of pivot when they need to. That is, I think, where Nuggets fans can be very frustrated about previous decisions affecting current and future decisions, where a lot of what they've done, and I don't know if there was a lot of foresight in this being at this particular moments where the Nuggets have a specific need that they thought that they could fill, that Calvin Booth even said during media day, if there is something that we need, we will fill that hole. Like, we don't think we have enough. We may not have enough shooting. We might have to fill that. That was something that he said. And I think there was an expectation that they could, that guys like Zeke Naji and Dario Saric, if necessary, or others would be tradable. And they just haven't been. And that's the price that they are paying right now. And some of the margin moves and almost all of the margin moves that they have made, except the Russell Westbrook signing, have gone against them. And now they're in a really tough position where they've had to dig themselves out of it while other teams are able to do so.
I'm going to talk about the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope decision because I had somebody call me out in the comments. We're going to talk about, we'll ask Swipe a tough question for a little Swipe versus Gripe. And we'll talk more about kind of where the Nuggets go from here, both this season and beyond. We'll talk about that coming up on Locked On Nuggets. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings, Prize Picks makes it easy and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Here's how it works. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Swipe it can take less. Pair that with 1 more correct pick and you're cashing out. This week, we're looking at the board and we're looking at what the options are. You've got the Nuggets, who are probably going to be short-handed here on a back-to-back versus the Orlando Magic with a pretty good interior defense. Will Jokic just score through it? Does that mean you get a better number for going more? We'll see what happens. They've got their Taco Tuesday promo that gives you discounted player projections for even more value. Check out the promos tab and you can nail any super sweet Millie Winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. So Maya says, I just want to ask Matt, will he admit his second apron reasoning for letting KCP walk was so dumb, zero flexibility, and even his AG missing significant time scenario played out and they did nothing? Okay, so here's the deal. I was never like, this is a good move. I told you what the reasoning was. Like, I explained what the reasoning was. I'm pretty consistent that Contavious Caldwell-Pope's better than Christian Brown and they needed him. Christian's been better than him this year. They still need KCP. Like, they just needed to go get KCP. That's the guy that they need currently. That's it. That's the guy that precisely the three of us believe, the type of player that the three of us believe is what they need. Can I get a nod of agreement on that? Yeah.
Sure.
So, like, that's the thing, right? I made the argument because that was their discussion point, and it is like pretty reasonable. And here's the thing: if they had signed KCP, maybe they wouldn't have needed to. But what if they had another need they needed to address? They would have been able to. That's the problem with the flexibility argument. But the thing is, with flexibility, you have to actually do something with it, and they didn't. They tried to, and they failed. So there's two different things here. They need to do something. Why didn't they do anything? Okay, well, they tried. The inability to get things done is the hard part because you don't know what was on the other end of those calls. You don't know what was on the other end of those lines. And I'm not defending it because I think that's the job. Your job is to manage those things. To me, the biggest thing is that, Swipa talked about all the assets that they sent out in these deals that depleted the asset board. When I talk to people, that was the number one thing is we just need assets because they needed stuff to attach so that they could get some maneuverability. They made the actual cap allocation flexibility for them to be able to do something, but they needed assets to move the toxic stuff they have on their roster, the dead contracts off to acquire other people, because you can't trade a bad player for a good player. Like, fans will do this where they're like, I don't understand. Why didn't they just trade Zeke Naji for DeAndre Hunter? Why would Atlanta do that? So they wanted some sort of recompense for those type of things, and they didn't have any of that. And that to me is the thing, is because they believed in the young talent. Now, Swipa, I'll ask you this. We talked about a wing. We talked about a defender. We talked about a bench scorer. We talked about guys that are going to come off the bench. You believe in Peyton Watson. You hype him up anytime he has a great game. Doesn't adding somebody take away from those minutes? Doesn't adding a player that could truncate that and limit your flexibility on those types of things, limit your ability to do those things? Shouldn't Peyton Watson be the guy stepping up to make it to where the Nuggets didn't need to make this trade?
Peyton Watson been playing out of position for a year and a half. So, I mean, I've said he's a 3-2 since last.
He's not playing any 4 now. I'll just say that. Like, they're moving Mike to the 4.
Mm-hmm. And he's also been playing, I think, better this year. I think he has filled a lot of roles for this team. I think he's arguably their most important defender they've had this year. He's won them 2 games this year, including the Thunder game where they beat Chet and SGA.
And why do they need to make a trade?
Well, because I think this is where I think we're. No, I think you're asking this question well, obviously because you're good at what you do. So he is not a screen navigator guard defender to the degree into which they need. That's not his specialty. He is an excellent off-ball, weak side help defender. Also, very good step below that wing defender versus other comparable players like Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, not necessarily LeBron James. So they're missing positional versatility at the guard spot to defend guards, i.e. Anthony Simons, Jordan Poole, could be Steph Curry, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. Those have been the issues they have struggled with. Yeah. So I think that's where this whole thing is coming from, is you have Peyton. He's really good. But the problem is the way the Nuggets is set up, because we love to talk about basketball here. They play at the level and they like to play drop. What do you need to do that? with Jokic on the court, who can't move his feet, who's not a good vertical defender, and who's slower on average than other centers at his position, even though he's really good with his hands. You need quick, decisive, technically sound guards who are able to screen navigate, that they know how to work through those worm penetrations by point guards, who know how to get around, are quick with their technique, pre-rotate, all that stuff. They don't have that. Christian is not that, even though Christian also has defensive upside. So there are very obvious things that have changed from last year to this year in their defense, and which has made their defense noticeably and statistically worse than it was last season. And what I'm saying is that right now, their best route to being a good defense is showing premium effort, which we've seen them do in stretches. But I think that when you have to rely on effort because there's a lack of talent on the defensive end, that's when you put yourself into a bind. And I think NBA history has also shown that to be true as well.
The other thing is that they have, and we've talked about this before, of course, they just have so many one-way players right now that you're going to have to pick and choose your spots, pick and choose your moments for when you go offense, when you go defense. There's a very real world where Peyton Watson is unplayable on the offensive end in the playoffs. There's a very real world where Julian Strawther's unplayable on the defensive end in the playoffs. There's a very real world where guys are hunting Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. over and over again, and Denver needs to take one of them off the floor so that they could play 3 positive defenders next to one of those guys in Jokic. Like, Denver has just so many holes and flaws that you want more optionality. You want more guys. You want more choices, because as we've seen for other teams, it doesn't have to be like guaranteed your top 5, your top 6 are going to be like better than the other team. You might need options. You might need your 8th guy to step up, your 9th guy to step up, your 10th guy to step up. And that guy may not be the same from series to series. You might need somebody different. And that's just where Denver is going to be up a creek at this point.
Well, I made this case last night. What if they don't? You know, I mean, that's the thing is like, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to, I think it's fine to ascribe concern. I think it's fine to ascribe, this is not a well-built roster. Like, we all agree on that. This is not a well-built roster.
That's
sad. Like, we just don't, we knew that coming into the season.
Yeah.
Right. And the idea was that by the end of the season, like this is when I said, I was like, by the end of the year, the hope is that they'll get there. But part of that equation was internal development and a trade, and they didn't either. Right. I think Julian's better than he was at the start of the year, but I agree. You put him on the court in a stagger minutes lineup, right? Like, you put him in any game where they're going to stagger starters, and he's food, and that's a real problem. I think I'm okay. I actually kind of think Peyton could be a 16 gamer.
Maybe.
I'm not.
We just don't know.
I'm pretty optimistic about that. And I think that other teams have those kind of guys too. Most of the Thunder is honestly like, are those guys 16 gamers? And we don't know the answer to that outside of like Shea. I think Shea is a 16 gamer. Ihart's a 16 gamer.
But I think that's where it is, right? Obviously, that's going to be up to Malone to be able to make the determination between, I think in that situation, Russell Westbrook and Peyton Watson. Yeah. One, he's going to have a lot of trust in because he's a veteran and he's a ball handler. Peyton, not a veteran nor a ball handler, might just be better suited defensively to handle certain matchups, late game situation, but also that presents its own issues. So, yeah, some of that is definitely going to be on the coaching. I just think that by and large that, and we'll get to this, I imagine, in the third segment, there are just things that they have not done to fortify their core. And I mean their core, meaning their heartbeat. Like, your body is designed to protect what's on the inside. Like, the reason why you run and lift weights and try to eat well is to protect the inner workings of your nervous system. And the nervous system of the Nuggets is this Serbian fellow who does all these really spectacular, nice things, but he has very clear deficiencies. And so the point is, I think that's kind of the way that I look at how do you actually construct rosters to really make sure that when you get to nitty-gritty time, you have what you need. And I think right now they have what they need in many ways offensively, but I think that's where it is like, go ahead.
And I'll just counterpoint to that. Like, Jokic was directly asked this, do you think you have enough? as a roster, and he said yes. He didn't elaborate any more than that. He might be lying. Like, I mean, that's
he's never been one to like. He might believe it too, but he's also like not gonna like out his teammates for not doing.
I disagree.
He has been a little bit more forward this year.
No, I'm not even talking about that. It's you're thinking of it. It's like that's thinking of it the wrong way, because like he doesn't take it personally. But he's sometimes surprisingly honest, because he's just very much like, there's no reason to be hyper dramatic about this. Like, yeah, no, we're not good enough. That's okay. Sure. Lots of teams aren't good enough. So if he says it, I believe him. I genuinely think that. I think that's his mindset. I don't think he's lying.
And so if everybody steps up, if everybody does what they're supposed to do, if Jamal Murray's healthier than he was last year in the playoffs, if Mike learns from his missteps in the Minnesota Timberwolves series, if Aaron plays a little bit better, then there are reasons to believe that they can get through it.
People are talking about it in the comments. I just want to say, like, again, if you're like, what's Jokic supposed to say? Okay, that doesn't prove that he thinks it. And the other thing I would say is, there's a way for him. Here's what he would have said if he honestly didn't believe it. Is he'd be like, I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. That's what he would have said. Right? I genuinely am just telling you, like, he would have given an indication when he's like, yeah, we have enough.
Yeah.
Like, take him at his word for that. And I very rarely say that about players, because I think everybody lies. Steph, I think he would be lying. LeBron, lying his ass off. But not Joker. Up next, we'll kind of get into some of the stuff that Swipo wants to talk about in terms of how we got here and protecting the heart, so to speak, of the Nuggets. We'll talk about that coming up on Locked On Nuggets. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets, that's just the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. So, as part of the, I did want to note this, that as part of the machinations of this new CBA, which I hate with a violent passion. These are candidates with above 12.8 million mid-level. Malcolm Brogdon, Bruce Brown, Ben Simmons, and Bojan Bogdanovic. The Nuggets are not able to sign those players because they're above the first apron. They are not able to sign Bruce Brown. They are not able to sign Malcolm Brogdon, which would have been a great get. They are not able to add those players. Anybody else, you're looking at guys that are just simply not going to really make a difference in the playoffs. Maybe you can pick up, like, if you want to go take a flyer on Jaden Springer, but they'd have to make a roster spot, which they don't want to do because Calvin Booth believes so much in his guys.
Here's one name that I would throw out there. I think Josh Richardson ended up on the Utah Jazz. I wonder if they decide to buy him out, just get him an opportunity to go play for a contender. Would he move the needle at all for any of you guys?
I don't think that the team would move off Hunter Tyson or Jalen Pickett for that. So I don't, that'll be my only concern.
Could they move off of Vlatko as somebody who's expiring and is already injured?
You didn't get Joker any help, and you want to waive his best friend on the team?
Well, this is how they get help.
Is that enough help?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
I'm asking you.
I think that's...
You are that thirsty for an addition that you want to waive Vlatko for Josh Richardson.
Matt, like, look, I'm trying to come up with options here for Denver.
I
don't really have an opinion. I'm just coming up with something. Like, that's
all right. Let's go back to Captain Matt over here, and you wanted to talk about protecting the heartbeat. You are exuding. Exuding.
It's the posture.
Rage.
It's
honestly, he's like, I'm not mad. Don't put in the paper that I was mad.
No, it's not. I'm actually sitting up. It's the camera, the way that the thing is set up. If I go like this, and it's going to veer off, so I have to uncenter it. And so I'm sitting full up. It's just the camera is lower. But
you're short.
In large part, I think that I think we're all in agreement that we think the team is poorly constructed. I do think that in order to, I'm just different from a lot of people, which I've accepted. I don't believe in wasting all-time great years. That's just not my thing. Like, I truly never been my maybe when I was a child. It might have been watching Jordan in the 90s when I was a baby and being like, you know what, that's what it should be. It might be watching Kobe and Shaq, and then we saw those wasted years from Kobe, and then they get Paul Gasol, then they're winning again. Now he gets 5. It could have been watching the Tim Duncan era, and they just like for 14 straight years were just dominant. So it could have been all of those things, but the Nuggets they're in a position now where their best player is turning 30 in approximately like 2 weeks. And you might never have this player again. And more statistically in Denver, more than likely not. And then let alone staying on your team till 30 for obvious reasons that we saw as of last weekend. So I am just of the mindset that everything at all times should just be, how do we make sure we win a ring this year? But again, that's me. I think that's more of a big market approach. I think that is how, your Lakers and others have a kind of approach the situation. How do you fortify and maximize? But even if you don't do it every year, like we all would think that the Lakers are run poorly, but they also got Anthony Davis next to LeBron, and they sold it in the 21-22 year when they traded for Russ in that $47 million contract. I think that's where they kind of threw the vision off. But I think when you have players like that, I think there's just a manner in which you kind of have to move. And I think there are, post that 21-22 year, y'all, I just thought that they really could have really leaned into the athletes and defenders thing, which they did. But I think when they got cheap around those margins with that last set, Bruce, you couldn't do anything about. But the KCP move, indecision to keep Zeke instead of that, I think it's things like that I think that everybody's kind of evaluating, and we're saying that like we all agree. I think Joker's had a slightly positive defensive year in certain situations, but I think he's also been a negative in many stretches this year too, more so than recent years. Why is that? Is that because he's getting older? Is that because the offensive burden he has to carry has been heavier than the last couple of years, but prior to the last, let's say, 7 weeks or so? Like, is it because the situation around him has changed so drastically that he has to commit more effort there and he can't do that? Like, there's a lot of things that lead into that. And so it's just a matter of, but again, if Porter's playing like this, is it really that big of a deal? Like, if Jamal Murray able to go 7 and 10 because he doesn't have to shoot the ball, then no. Like, then do what they want.
I do think that given the lack of flexibility that they had this year, Murray's unable to be traded, Gordon's unable to be traded. They don't have access to a lot of picks. That's not really changing like a ton next year, but some guys become available. You go through these playoffs, you see who shows up, you see who doesn't show up. There's a lot of pressure on it. If they don't win the championship and if they don't really make progress, then you have to look. You have to look at this core and what it actually brings to the table, and you have to probably make some tough decisions. The other factor is that I believe Nikola Jokic is extension eligible this offseason. And if you approach him with an extension and he starts to think about it as opposed to just like immediately signing it, then you probably have to be pretty aggressive when it comes to doing what you need to keep him around.
Sure, and you'd like them to be super aggressive in doing it, but you can also be so aggressive that you wind up disrupting and putting yourself in worse positions. The Phoenix Suns put Bradley Beal next to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, and it's a flaming disaster.
Of course. But here's the thing. Nobody in their right mind would trade for Bradley Beal, and they did it anyway because they're dumb, because they decided, you know what's better than Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton? Bradley Beal, and they were wrong. So I think that there's ways to go about that correctly, and Denver's going to have to be smart about it.
Make big aggressive moves, but also make sure that you're right, because if
not... Matt, just hold on, y'all. I think there's a line to be walked here. There is a big aggressive, but there's also... No one, I think, of basketball ingenuity said the Bradley Beal trade was going to be worth this assault. Yeah. I mean, I could have told you that. I don't think Matt even agreed with that, and I think Ryan agreed. But I think there's lines. I think you can be aggressive. For me, you know what aggressive was? PJ Washington to Neil Gafford. And that was a risk in some ways, but you can see the concept. But again, I think you do stuff like that and you try and then you keep it moving if it doesn't work. The Russell Westbrook trade, while I get it conceptually, can we give LeBron a better ball handler? Sure.
Hang on.
But it wasn't a good fit from the get-go.
You can't just be like, we're just going to keep flipping out. Blah, 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 blah. That's not how you that's not a good approach either. Right. So I
don't know if I suggested that either.
Well, that's what it sounded like.
They've also had the same core together for 4 years. Now they've been injured in a couple of them, but
sure. And that's totally fine. Again, I asked you last night after this stretch of play, do you want to trade Michael Porter Jr.? Like the answer here was not to extend Jamal, and then you see what you could get. But here's the thing: is given how Jamal's played, you're probably not getting anything you want anyway. Like the Nuggets had 3 players they were either unable or were not going to trade: Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon. Right? That's how much money is that off the top of your head, Ryan?
This year, that is about 110 million.
It's 110 million. 36. So Michael Porter Jr. was the guy that you could swap out, and like we were like, it's not like I wasn't supportive of those moves, of that idea. Like I was the one that was like, no, don't go for Levine. You don't need offense. Like go to Atlanta and try and get Bogdan, who got moved today, and Hunter, who got moved today. Like offer them Michael Porter Jr. But the problem is the Hawks are just cheap. Like this is the other thing, is that the players that were available were on teams where they're like, we don't want any money back, and we just want to get under the tax line because our owner just wants to save money. And the Nuggets couldn't offer those kind of deals. They committed so fully to the idea of the draft is what's going to get us there. These guys are going to be what's going to get us there. Julian Strother, Peyton Watson, they're all going to be just like Christian Brown, and they weren't. Like those guys aren't as good as Christian. They're not.
But again, if I remember correctly, what I said, I think yes, building a roster around 6 rookie contracts is more than likely not the best way to do that. As of last offseason, totally when I said that.
Yeah.
And so I think even prototypically, you would need veterans in those roles, which I said, like Nikhil or Dunn, cheaper, young-ish 25, 26-year-olds you want in this role. So you're asking, you're having to have a conversation with me and how I process what this team needed in response to how Booth initiated the roster with a very young roster with 5 to 6 rookie contract, which again is not prototypical for the rest of the league and how you build a contender.
Yeah, I agree.
History
he tried really hard to be like, this is what the new CBA is going to do, so this is the path. And he went so far, like Calvin Booth went so far down it that he didn't leave himself any options. That to me was always the key here, where it's like, I don't mind you being like, yeah, no, I like Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson. I think they can be guys. But you needed to give yourself the option of, whoops, got it wrong. That happens. Let's waive them and get some actual NBA players in here. Right? Like you needed that optionality. But like Swipe also, I think like how much of this is like, if I give you the validation of that you were right, like what, because that feels what this is like, is you're just like, I said, and I'm like, I don't know what, like, okay.
He is right.
I don't disagree.
What game are we playing?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
We're in the content game, meaning we're in the estimation game, which means we're in the reporting game. So
now that we've said it, is it like what's next? Like that's the thing.
No, I think you're getting me confused. And so I want to make sure you will understand my positioning. My positioning is not about being right on this show among you all. My positioning is, what has the team needed in order to be the best version of itself? And I have argued what they need are certain things like Nall, like Bruce, like Dunn, because those are actually fitting the demographic that fits how Joker struggles, how Jamal struggles, how Porter might struggle. But again, that's just because I'm watching this team and I'm watching, and I'm disagreeing with Calvin Booth's assertion that young players are going to fix this. So that's what I'm saying. Like I'm measuring what this team needs based on how the rest of the league tends to cooperate at the highest level in an NBA final setting. That's what we're talking about.
I think here is a question: should they pivot completely this summer? That I think is a more interesting question going forward. Is should they, like the Warriors had to, like they didn't. It's like, did they abandon 2 timelines? No, right? They still got Kuminga, they still got Moody, they still got Pods. They didn't trade those guys, right? Should the Nuggets wipe the slate on all the young talent except for Peyton Watson? Maybe, depending on what you can get him. Should they wipe the slate on Project Dynasty this summer?
No. I don't.
Can you answer that before we have a playoff run?
And that's the key. That's of course the key. You need to see how these guys actually play in a playoff series. You need to see what Christian Brown does in a situation where they need him, not where he is like an addition to the rotation. You need to see what Peyton Watson looks like when they count on him, what Julian Strother looks like when they count on him. And I think we'll learn a lot about how they handle that and what they are able to do.
We're going to wrap up this version of the show. If you're listening to this on podcast, you can catch the full extended conversation. Don't go anywhere if you're in the comments. We're not going anywhere. We are going to put a truncated version of this up for Locked On at this marker, and then we'll come back. And if you want to hear the rest of it, check out the live show at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets for more. Okay. So Swipe, I want to know from you, do you think that they should abandon Project Dynasty and wipe the slate on the young guys?
No, never been my positioning. Not once.
I'm not saying you should. I'm asking if it's an alternative.
I'm just simply responding in general. Like, no, that is not my positioning, period. I think if I'm starting from a starting place, they should absolutely, if you ask me, Brown, Watson, let's get it. Let's do it. They're more than welcome to the party. I think that if you look at the Celtics, if you look at the Lakers in 2020, or even the Bucks in 21, the Warriors in 22, they kind of fit the prototypical guard wings that you need in order to win at that level versus elite guards or wings. I think you can do that. But I also think they need more experienced players who are just a little bit more developed in their game and under understanding of how they need to execute in a game, who have developed their skill set. I think Bruce Brown was perfect. And remember, we got Bruce Brown on day 2, Matt. And I remember a lot of people, and I don't know if I told, me and Ryan were obviously in a relationship at this point. I thought Bruce could play that backup point guard because he did with Detroit, but he had played the backup 3-4 with the Nets. And then he comes to Denver, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he didn't forget how to dribble the ball. And he filled so many different roles because he had the experience to do it. And I'm saying the Nuggets need other players, like what Ryan said, that aren't just going to be stuck in a lane because they're young and underdeveloped, and they don't know what they're doing. And I think Jalen Pickett doesn't know what he's doing yet. Hunter Tyson doesn't know what he's doing yet. Julian Strawther is just getting there. Peyton Watson is still getting there. Christian Brown is there. So that's 4 of 5 young players that are still in process of consistency, whereas you could have players, like I suggested, which are a little bit older and in their 20s, that this is my role in the NBA. I know how to execute that, and I'm going to be better at this than most other people in the league. That's my philosophy. I think you can do it, but I think weighing your balance on the whether or not you're going to pivot to a championship degree on all of those things happening at once, I think is where the fault lies.
Makes sense. It's well argued. I'm actually kind of in favor of them wiping the slate. I think Peyton Watson still has all-star potential. I really do. The problem is, like, if he ever gets there, what are you doing? The risk is you trade him and then he gets there, right? That are you willing to if you can get good value to help them win a championship now, is that worth it? Like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. Like, but that's the kind of tough conversation you have to have, because Watson's the one with value. Julian is, I really like Julian. Like, I'm higher on Julian than most. I really like the shake to his game. I like his reads. I talked about that last night. Like, I think Julian's going to be a really good NBA player, but I do think it's going to take him, like, when he's 26, 27, I think Julian's going to be a really good NBA player. I don't think Julian's going to be what they need at 24. I just don't. I just don't think so. Do you have time? Do you want to wait? Do you want to just lock up that roster spot for that many years? If Peyton Watson becomes a 3-level all-star, but he does so at age 26, do you want to wait?
It's a long time to wait.
It's a long time to wait.
Jokic and in the meantime, not going to be the best player in the world by then.
And in the meantime, you basically just have to. There's this, and this is like a real tension point in Nuggets media of, you got to play the guys in order to be able to move them. You got to play Jalen Pickett so that he looks good enough to move him. But the reason you're not playing him is because he's not good enough. Like, it's impossible. They stuck themselves in this, like, impossible wedge for them to get there. My problem is that with the way that we talk about this team and the frustration that has been expressed, which I get when we're in these conversations, and then I look up and they're a half game behind the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. And
because Matt Moore, you are a stupendous basketball mind. And last year you are, and I've given you the credit. I've told you this before we met, so relax. Remember, you were right about the 57-win team. You knew what was coming because you saw they exhausted themselves, but you also said very smartly going into the playoffs, do they have solves for all the matchups? and you anticipated some of those things, and you were 100% correct when they got to the Wolves series. So I think that's what I'm saying. I am more concerned, very similar to how you were, do they have the solves when they get to the playoffs, beyond the seeding, when they get to the Thunder, when they get to the Rockets, when they get to Memphis, or let's just say this new version of this, the Hollywood Luka Lakers, like when they play versus the Clippers or whoever, will they have enough solves to be able to win in these matchups? So I'm more so taking your approach that you took last year, Matt, as opposed to thinking about what they're doing right now in seeding, because everything's about matchups. Like, you and I are both on the same page. They couldn't solve the Wolves in Game 7, but they would have solved the Mavericks for me 4 or 5 games. Yeah. I think this year is very similar. It's just you're a statistician, so you're a probability person, so you would love this. When you have less solves, it decreases your ability to be able to solve different matchups based on who lines up with you. Right. But you're still good enough that if you do get favorable solutions, you can dominate A, B, C, get to the NBA Finals, and now you're not playing. Now you're not playing the Cavs. Now we're playing the Celtics.
Yep.
So and the whole story is completely different. And then now we're 100. Now this was all for naught, because they can beat the Celtics more easily than they can beat the Cavs just because of matchups.
Yeah. Zogi says, "Oh, here we go. Seeding brain rot." My point here is that they are not the Warriors, guys. If they were in the play-in tournament, my tone would be a lot different here. I'd be like, "You're not good enough. You may not make it out of the play-in. You may not get out." And DTSC, who's always in here, always upset whenever anything goes wrong, is like, when was the last time the Nuggets played a good team? I cannot stress to you this enough how many times I've seen teams that were not good versus other good teams make playoff runs. Like, do you really think that this Nuggets team can't make a playoff run because of how they play in November, December, or January versus good teams? There's no correlation. There's just not. I'm just telling you. There's no I've done the work. I've done the research. There's no correlation in NBA history. It says that if you have the guys, you have the talent, and you're good enough, you can get through. Now, I'm not saying that what I'm not saying is that they will, and I'm not saying that making a trade wouldn't have improved their chances. My point is that the season is not over because they didn't make a trade. That's my only thing here, is like, what I don't want to do is I don't want to go all in on Booth as a failure. Fire Calvin Booth. This is a disaster. Oh, they won the title. Well, what a minute.
Whoa. Because you don't even believe that.
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you.
No, but Matt, you don't believe that because Rob Pelinka's not done his job right, and that he lucked into Luka, and they might win the title.
Exactly. Now,
he's a certified F.
I will say that Lakers team, like, somebody was saying that the Lakers are better than the Nuggets now. Sir, I'm telling you, like, the defensive you think Denver's got defensive problems? Yeah. Try Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic and drop coverage with Mark Williams.
Going to be tough.
It's going to be bad.
Yeah, that's the thing, that you go through each of these individual matchups, and we'll have plenty of time, especially when the rosters kind of settle down here, buyout market settles down, to really evaluate what each of these teams is going to bring to the table in a playoff series. We're going to be able to ask ourselves, like, okay, what are the solves for each of these individual teams, these individual questions, and how that's going to go? Like, how does Denver solve Ja Morant? How does Denver solve Anthony Edwards? How does Denver match up with Kyrie Irving?
It's crazy.
How does Denver match up with
their best player?
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Like, and you're right. Like, that's probably true, but I think that they're going to have to navigate that. And if there was one question that I think could be their fatal flaw, it's the fact that they have to overcompensate so much on the perimeter against these elite guards that it leaves them vulnerable everywhere else.
But Ryan, and this would be the funniest outcome. But you know what? It may not matter. They could just be the 23 Heat, just way more talented. All of a sudden, they start hitting their threes, and then they're cooking.
Aaron says this. So the Nuggets have a chance of going on a gimmicky finals run like the Mavs? Yes. What I'm telling you is there was no path for them to build a super contender this season because of the roster construct. There was no path.
Is it that gimmicky if you have Jokic? Like, is it really that gimmicky?
That's the thing. I will ask you, like, because people will make this assertion, right? Based off of the fact that the Nuggets didn't beat any 50-win team. I think that's ridiculous. Those teams were really good. But they'll make that assertion if they make a fluky run like this and they lose in the finals. Because which we admitted, like, we've talked about this, that if they make the finals, it's hard to judge this as a failure. It's hard to judge the people will say that. They'll be like, if you don't win the title every year with Nikola Jokic, it's a failure. That's not how the NBA works. I'm sorry. But if they make the finals and they lose, right? It won't be a failure, but it'll also be viewed differently because of the 2023 run. It'll just be viewed differently. But like, there's absolutely a possibility for you. My point has been that the Spurs, 2007, I don't think that they were not the best team in the West. They just weren't. Yeah. Phoenix was better. Dallas was better. Okay.
Was Dallas better than 2011 when they beat the Lakers?
Right. Yeah. They were the best team in the West.
It just depends. I mean, but it depends on perspective. They were the defending champions.
Yeah. So that's the thing is like, this is what I argued on a show that I'm starting up and doing more episodes over on my own YouTube channel on Daggers is like, no, the best team doesn't always win the series. It doesn't always happen. I'm not even trying to sit here and be like, hey guys, you could still win if you're lucky. I get that's how it sounds. I get that. It's more a matter of, I think this summer is when you need to reconfigure. Now, this is my thing is, should they have done something at the deadline? Yeah, I think they should have. I think they should have found a way. I think that's the job. I think that's the job if you're the GM of the, like he said, as Swipa has asserted, you're the steward of the Jokic era. You got to figure out a way to solve the fact that Zeke Naji is your fifth best player. You got to solve that problem. You got to solve the fact that your coach who won a championship does not think that Jalen Pickett or Hunter Tyson are viable options in a regular season rotation. You got to solve that. You got to solve the fact that DeAndre Jordan is having to play and doing a great job of it, but DeAndre Jordan is having to be your backup center because of your decisions. And look, I thought the Saric thing was going to work. The players thought the Saric thing was going to work. Swipa thought it was the worst move in the history of the NBA.
Swipa was right.
It was bad, right? You make these moves and then you move out on them. But the big thing here is they swung on Saric and missed and couldn't correct it. They couldn't just be like, all right, you know what? That's fine. We'll just clear a roster space and we'll go add somebody else. They couldn't do it because they locked up all these guys.
Ted, Matt meant the fifth highest paid player, not the best player. So it was just, he was on the right.
Mm-hmm. Also, there's a lot of comments in the comment section on like we're providing hopium for the Nuggets right now. Like I don't categorize what we're talking about right now as hopium. I think everybody says the Nuggets are doomed. I've probably been a pretty big doomer of this team over the course of the last month or so. Like I think I've had those moments for sure. But even I said this on a show previously. I think the Nuggets have like a 5% chance of winning the NBA championship because they've got Nikola Jokic. I think that there are so many different things that they like could go wrong and probably will go wrong, but you can't just write it off because this was a team that won the championship 2 years ago and they have the same core and still have reasonable role players. Do they have great role players? No. Do they have enough role players? Probably not. But do they have enough? Like we didn't think that they had enough off the bench in 2023 and they still made it work.
Who?
I feel like you were advocating for a trade that season, Ryan. Am I wrong? 2023?
I probably advocated for a better backup center than DeAndre Jordan that year, which
and like last year, you've kind of done this where you've been like, well, I said last year they needed to go get a guy, and I'm just kind of like, it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have changed anything. Them getting a guy at the deadline doesn't change the outcome of the Wolves series.
I don't necessarily agree with that because we've talked about this already, though. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if they had another ball handler that could take pressure off of Murray, then maybe Murray doesn't gas out. Maybe he doesn't get hurt. It's a maybe. It's an if.
Yeah. Reasonable people can disagree. Hurricane said, I don't feel very hopeful. You shouldn't. They didn't do anything at the deadline. This is the team that in the entire year, this show and others have talked about how they are one guy short, that they need another guy. And we don't have like easy answers. It's also not our job, but we don't have easy answers. I will say that I do have a hard this has been my real struggle for as long as I've been doing this gig. I don't know how to judge the inability to make deals that I wasn't allowed to negotiate. So what I mean by that is I don't know what those calls were like. I don't know what happened when Denver called Philadelphia, because you call everybody. You call Philadelphia and you get like, hey, I got Zeke Naji in the 2031. What can I get? I don't know what Philly was like. Philly was like, we don't have any interest in either of that. Sorry, there's nothing to do there.
Question. did they have to extend Zeke to a 4-year deal, or could they have done it something as short as a 2 or a 1-year deal?
They absolutely could have done shorter. They
You
assumed
could
that he
whatever you
would be a much better asset
Right.
at this point because
So
he was
Yeah.
21
I
when
think
they
that's
did it.
kind of because you know, Matt, you know what I do for a living. Everything
Yeah.
I do, it's in process with each other. Everything is connected. 7 generations are connected to every decision you make right now. So what I'm saying is that the connected decision to no, I don't want Zeke Naji in a 2031 first is I don't want 4 years of $8 million a year. That's not a descending contract. I probably be more comfortable with first round pick, 2-year contract. Oh, all right, whatever. Then I think we can move, especially for a player that hasn't proven it. But I think that was Booth. Booth took a gamble that said he hasn't proven it, but I think he will. Here's 432, just like Jock Landale got 432. The issue is that because the Rockets had more flexibility, they said, fine, let's get Steven Adams. And Steven Adams is way better. And what is Jock is down there? It's my telescope sitting on the end of the bench. And so it's an issue they have, but it's no longer an issue that's damaging them because they have a better backup option.
Non-NBA channel says Matt's just trying to sound smart and coming off stupid. I guess I could just sit here and be like, this is inexcusable. Fire.
Yeah.
Calvin Booth. This is inexcusable. I won't stand for this. Jokic should ask for a trade. Is that smart? Is that thoughtful? Is that like well-reasoned? No. Like, here's the thing. I don't think Joker ever reaches the point of any of these other kind of things because I just don't think Joker is wired the same way. Luka and Joker can be friends and be different people. And Luka might have left the Mavericks eventually. I don't think Joker leaves. To be perfectly honest with you, I think that moving sounds like a big hassle to him. You'd have to you have to deal with your wife asking you a million questions about where should we put this? What do you want to do with this? Like it's a real big hassle. That's a huge hassle. And I genuinely don't think that that's where they're going to get to. I also don't think that Joker views it the way other people do, which is Joker is so good, he should have the second best player as his number 2, and they should win 7 titles. I don't think Joker views basketball that way. I just don't think he views it that way. I just don't think that's how he looks at the NBA and the landscape.
And maybe not, but that's also, I think, he is he is the talent of a top 5 player of all time, and the conversation just effectively changes around him if that's just something that he never once considered before in his life. I can't imagine. So the Nuggets are now responsible for that. So they have to move in a slightly different way than I think that they assumed that they previously would. One thing.
So, hang on, I want to say this. Anon says you could be like Swipa being realistic, not sounding delusional. You have a lot of fans in the comment section. Swipa.
There were a lot. Also, by the way, like the Ayo Dosunmu move, not realistic. As it turns out, not realistic because Chicago was just never willing to trade him. They
should have, though. He's right that they should have. You could be like Swipa being realistic, not sounding delusional. I just want to be very clear on this. I'm doing this for the content. If you're just like, why did the Nuggets not make a move? I would be like, because they couldn't, because they don't have any good players, because their GM thought that he was better at drafting than he was. I would say that to Calvin. I'd be like, you took gambles on Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson, and I don't think they're NBA players. That's it. That's it. That's where we're at. It's not Dario Saric, even with the player option. It's not even the Reggie Jackson move. It's not even the Reggie Jackson trade with the second rounders, because you should be able to move Zeke Naji and get 2 second rounders back. If he was the player that you thought he was, you should be able to trade Zeke Naji right now and have him be like 6'9", versatile forward, can switch and play center, a little bit of a 3-ball. Yeah, you can have my 2 seconds for that. Let's do it.
Miscalculation.
But he's not.
Yeah.
That's it. Like that's to me, Swipe, but that's it. So if everybody wants me to be like super negative, that's the end of it. Is that the guys that the Nuggets invested in are not that good.
I'm not. See, I think that's where Matt, because you and I, when we're flowing at our best, it's just when we're kind of tapping into the history, because we both have done this like on these like history runs before. I am just to the core of me. What has history proven to be true more often than not? These are the kind of things you typically need. And so what I'm saying is, you know what happened when the Bulls took a chance for Michael Jordan to say, let's get Jordan some help? Ron Harper. Oh, Ron Harper's a 6'5" two-way guard that literally does all the things Jordan doesn't need to do in his early and mid-30s. Here you go. Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, you name it. And so I'm saying that like because Matt, I think you think at this point Jokic is one of the 10 best players ever, probably, or 15, wherever you have him in your brain.
Yep.
I'm just saying that, like, you and I have both done this. I don't want him to be Hakeem. Like that's what I'm saying. Like every other iteration of this kind of player gets a certain level of support.
I think the problem I have with your historical comparison is, if we want to talk nuance and those kind of things, then you have to also look at the context of where the league was at then versus now.
Yeah, sure.
And there's two things. The CBA was wildly different, and honestly, GMs were a lot smarter now. GMs are a lot smarter now. Like the evolution of GMs, you go back to the 2000s and 90s, there were guys that just made dumb moves. It was Nico Harrison's all the way down. Like it was Nico Harrison's all the way down. And now I genuinely, like, because you have more social media, because you have more attention, and because like just these teams are wider, there's more decision makers, there's more people in the room, you have these different departments that focus on different things, you have more tools. Some people ignore all that and they make their own decisions. Like this is one of the things that I think concerns me, is it sounds very much like this is becoming a hierarchical, top down, one guy is doing everything on his own. And before, the Nuggets were a collaborative, everybody's got voices in the room, lots of people are working together
within the Nuggets organization in particular.
Yeah. You know, and like, look, also, if you want to talk about that, got Ron Harper, got all these guys to help out MJ, and what did Jerry Krause get for it?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, to be fair, he broke up Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan. So don't end that way. I'm saying help.
Krause got a bad deal.
Don't end the dynasty. Don't end it over some money and disagreement and all that stuff.
Let me pivot us really quick. Swipa's main point throughout all of this has been that Jokic has never played with another top 15 player in NBA history. He's never played with another all-star, never played with somebody that can like really seriously carry the load in a way that like Jamal just hasn't been able to. Maybe he can in the playoffs. He's being paid he's going to be paid like the 14th or 15th best player in the NBA next year. That's a lot of pressure. And so if he can do that, then great. If not, if people believe, and I think it's fair to question whether he can, Luka Doncic is Jokic's friend. Luka Doncic is a free agent in 2026. It's very possible that he just decides, you know what, I'm happy in LA. This is the Lakers. This is awesome. 2026, like I'm going to be locked up Laker for life. Should they move heaven and earth to try to gear up and sign Luka and Joker and play them together in 2026?
No.
Because a lot of teams have done that before. A lot of teams have tried to game the system like that before, to shift everything and position themselves so that they can make those moves. Denver's not operated that way, and they won a title. So like they still found a way to do it even without making that happen. But I can understand Swipa's perspective of like, hey, you got Jokic, you got player X that is a top 15 player in the NBA. Everything else will figure out itself.
Yeah, I think that the era is different. I think to his point, and I think right now, see, that's the thing, Matt. I don't even think the Nuggets need Luka. I just think if they had, Matt, let me ask you a direct question. If they had another guard that could play defense and ball handle a little bit, which cheaper, we've seen those. If they had another, I don't know what you would think. Do you think a backup big, marginal, whatever else, somebody that would have worked that has Zeke's contract? Would you feel better about where this team is right now and what their potential ceiling could be? If they had a little bit more stability?
If they got a wing and a big?
Yeah, or whatever you feel like would be the marginal moves for the team to really help them.
Yeah, I would be like, hey, I'm trying to think of like the guys. If they had gotten, because Bogdanovich got moved for almost nothing, right? Mm-hmm. If they had the assets to get Bogdanovich and they had gotten Bogey and Day'Ron Sharpe, let's say that they made those two moves, I would be like, no, yeah, they're a contender. It's OKC and then Denver, which is where I still kind of think they are, but I would feel better about it. Like they would just be better. They would have, I think one of the things is there's real capacity for disaster here, is that like, to me, there's a chance that because you did not add anything, because you didn't change anything, you get caught in the first round and then people are getting fired.
Yeah. Oh, I think their ceiling is championship. Their floor is first round. But I don't think they had that potential the last 2 years. I don't think their floor was that low to where they could just dissipate because they're just no one can contain the ball whatsoever, and there's just no motivation to do so.
The reason I said, by the way, on the Luka thing is not like that you should like Luke. They should not get Luka Doncic. He's a bad player. Come on. I'm like, there's no point. He's going to resign with the Lakers. If you gear up everything to try and make you wind up like the Heat, where every year they're like, well, we can't do anything because what if we get Giannis? What if Giannis magically wants to come to us? Don't do that. Don't be that team. Okay. You're not one. They can't do that. And they're in Miami. Like, don't do that. If a deal comes across that makes you better, you jump on it. Call the summer about KD. Call. As soon as your guys are eligible to be traded, if they do not win the championship, now if they win the championship, I don't know what you should do it even if you win the championship. If you win the championship, your call in June should be, while you're at the finals, you should be on the phone with Phoenix being like, are you ready to give up the ghost? Because I got guys that are in the finals that I'm willing to give you. Like, that's what you should do. That's your responsibility. But like the pipe dream of, especially you want to talk about history. You're the best free agent signing in Denver history is Paul Millsap. And I love Paul, and I will fight anyone that says a bad word about Paul Millsap. But it's Paul Millsap. You can't be like, we're going to get Luka. There is a greater chance that this thing falls apart and Jokic does wind up with Luka in LA than Luka goes here. I don't think either is likely at all, but that's more likely.
Sad. That's like, look, I mean, this is the hand that the Nuggets have been dealt. This is the situation that they are in. They are the Denver Nuggets. They are not the Los Angeles Lakers. They are not a big market team that has this history that can just pull these moves and do these things. They have the Cronkies as owners who have been in a Comcast dispute for 5 years because they didn't want to accept whatever deal was on the table. And so fans haven't been watching basketball for that entire time. They ducked the second apron this year because they didn't want to pay KCP and be in the second apron. Like, there's a lot of reasons
the players are playing in a high school gym for practice.
Yeah. And that's like, we'll see whether that practice facility gets built. It might be 2056. Like, I don't know what to tell people because they want the Nuggets to act like a first-class, top-of-the-line organization and be the best that they can possibly be with Nikola Jokic.
Want them to be the Denver Broncos, yeah.
And they're just probably not that.
Non-NBA channel, does Matt think this team can win or not? The lack of a move does not make me less confident. Like, they are still the same team they were yesterday. So if you asked me yesterday, can the Nuggets win the title? I've said, yeah. They didn't change anything. So what's the answer today? Yes. Like, their inability to pull off a trade does not change that assessment because there's no reason for it. Like, there's nothing that's different today than yesterday in terms of their title viability.
In addition, other teams in the Western Conference haven't gotten so much better that the Western Conference hierarchy hasn't changed.
And like, I'll say that, like, I feel confident. Swipe, you think they can win the title? Yes.
Yeah, they're at their peak. Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan?
I think they can. I wouldn't bet on them.
Yeah. You're looking for a high probability.
Yeah.
It feels like
that's all you can get, right?
That's what you feel like, because it felt like, honestly, when we were in January of 2023, we were like, there's like a 40% chance that they win the title. They have like the most championship. And I said this last year, they had the most championship equity, and they did. And then they pushed too hard after All-Star break and they lost it because they gassed themselves out. But this is at their core. They're not as good as last year because they don't have KCP, but Russ makes up some of that. So they've at full strength, they've got the capacity. I'm not willing to, the thing I guess is I'm not willing to say they didn't make a trade, so they can't win the title. That's not how I view it. If you say, are they going to? I have no idea. I have no idea who wins the title this year. We're in a very weird era of parity. It's about matchups. It's about luck. It's about health. It's about those things.
I don't know how long we go, how long we're wanting to go on this one. Do we want to talk about some of the other deals that happened?
No, we can do them. We'll do them after the game tonight. We can
Okay.
talk about this game versus the Magic. AG Jamal questionable. They're probably going to rest him on the second night of the back-to-back at home versus the Magic. Magic on a back-to-back as well. This is going to be a pretty ugly game, but we'll see if the Magic offense was good last night. I don't know if they can do it 2 nights in a row. We'll see if they can get it done, and we'll have coverage for you. You can check out. We'll have more analysis on this. Swipe and I will go more on this tomorrow. We'll talk about what's next for the Nuggets going forward. Thanks for joining us. I really do appreciate everybody in the comments joining us at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Everybody that doesn't join us in the comments, that just listens to the show on the podcast version, thank you. Give us those 5-star reviews. Hope you guys have a great Friday, and we'll talk to you guys again tomorrow for another edition of Locked On Nuggets.
Boo.
Boo is right.